The president wants to spy on 200 million Americans without a warrant. Has he read this document, which he was sworn to uphold?
Now, I will not have you libel Abraham Lincoln.
I don't understand the problem with registering guns. We register cars.
Mark Levine brings you the news the government doesn't want you to know.
Today, an explosive story about connections between white supremacists and Islamic terrorists.
When there's a conflict between Scalia's conservative values and the Constitution of the United States, he throws away the Constitution.
We do have secret prisons. That is not what America's all about.
Let's go to Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening. Welcome to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. The Republican presidential debate has been very interesting over the last 6 months or so. Frankly, even if you ignore all the issues, just the horse race has been really fascinating. Perhaps always in second place, although they call him the front runner many times, is former Governor Mitt Romney of Massachusetts. He seems to have a solid floor at 20%, but he never seems to get above the ceiling of 25%. Leaping above him by fits and terms is one Republican candidate after the other. First came Michelle Bachmann, winner of the Iowa straw poll. She leaped above Mitt Romney and then fell. Then came Governor Rick Perry of Texas. He was supposed to be the one that definitely was the front runner. He ran way ahead of Romney. Then, oops, he fell short after some debate flubs. Next up was the strangest month of all. That's perhaps when businessman Herman Cain was at the top of the race. He leaped above Romney, got his 30-something%. Then came some sexual harassment claims. He's out of the race. Fourth up, and the current front-runner in the polls, is former Speaker Newt Gingrich. He is again leaping ahead of Mitt Romney, who stays in that second place. But next month, everything changes. Next month, all this fun and game and leapfrog, well, I think it's going to winnow down the candidates. We have the Iowa caucuses January 3rd, the New Hampshire primary January 10th. 1 month from today, I suspect that this current field of 7 candidates will be winnowed down to perhaps 4. Who'll be left? Ron Paul, who always seems to have his constant floor of 10% or so, will he be the one to win the Iowa caucuses? The 6th person in front? Well, the last 2, John Huntsman and Rick Santorum, do they have a shot at all? To answer these questions, I've invited 2 Republicans on the show with differing points of view. Sitting to, it's to my far left, but really he's to my far right, is Matt Robbins. He is the executive director of American Majority, which is a conservative political training center. Sitting to my immediate left is Mike Lane. He is the president of Intelligent Strategies, a Republican political consulting firm. I joked before the show that perhaps it's interesting that Mike has Republican as the first word in his group. Matt has conservative as the first word in his group. I wonder if that means they have a different point of view. Gentlemen, welcome to the Inside
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it, Mark.
Well, Mike, since I guess you have Republican in front of your group name, I guess I'll begin with you. You support tried and true Mitt Romney, every Republican's favorite second choice. Why is that?
Mark, first of all, I'm going to pronounce loudly and proudly that I am conservative.
Okay. Well, I realize you're both conservative and both Republican, but fair enough.
All right. Look, this is where I see this race going at this time, and this is why I think Mitt Romney, at least at this point, appears to be our strongest candidate. It's very important, I think, that Republicans rally around the person who has the best chance of beating Obama. I think it was the father of the modern conservative movement, even before Barry Goldwater, was Bill Buckley, who said when you're faced with 2 conservatives, without a lot of room between them in terms of the issues and what they'll accomplish and what they'll stand for and what they'll do, you want to get behind the one who has the best chance of winning. I believe right now it appears that Mitt Romney's the best chance of winning. Look, we went through 4 years ago or 3 years ago a change election. Obama won a change election. We're not going to have another change election, but we have 2 types of elections we can have coming up. The first is a referendum election. I believe Republicans want to compete this election in terms of a referendum. We want this to be totally about President Obama's record. If it is, I believe we're a mortal lock to win. The third type of election that we can have, and I believe some of the other candidates represent, and that doesn't mean that they can't win, but I believe it makes it more difficult, more problematic for us, is a choice election where Obama is able to draw those lines between, do you really want that person and what they said and what they stand for, or me and my vision and stuff like that. I think we can win a choice election, but I don't think it's a mortal lock. I do think it's a mortal lock that we can win a referendum election.
Before I get to Matt, Mike, my question for you is, Romney seems to always be in second place. I mean, you could have 5 people who leapfrog above him, but he never seems to get above 25% in the polls. The electorate's, well, let's try Bachmann, no, let's try Herman Cain, let's try Rick Perry, let's try Newt Gingrich. Why can't, at least up to now, Mitt Romney seem to break that 25% barrier?
Well, I could quibble with you over a couple points. I think he's been in the high 20s a couple times, and I think the latest national poll out today puts him at 28% tied point for point with Newt Gingrich, who has fallen out of the
second place.
No, he's tied.
Always
for
a bridesmaid
with Newt. I think that we're going through exactly what the primary process is all about, where it's tryouts. People are competing for positions. They're competing for being the starting pitcher. They're competing for our party's nomination for president. We know we have someone who is just brutally ruthless in terms of efficiency, keeping his campaign on message, keeping the focus on Obama's record, et cetera, et cetera. But he's not perhaps the most exciting or the most flashy in the crowd. And he has a lot of support, particularly, as you point out, although he's in the high 20s for first preference, he's almost everybody's second choice. And as we go through the tryouts and everybody gets their chance at the plate, we've had people who have risen. We've had people who have hit singles and doubles and stuff like that. But nobody's hit that grand slam home run. And I think that Republicans are coming to realize that Mitt Romney may be our best choice to beat Obama in November.
All right, Matt, here's your turn. Is every Republican's second choice good enough?
Is every Republican's second choice?
Mike just said that Mitt Romney seems to be everybody's second choice.
No, but he's got 28% that are his first choice.
Okay, fair enough.
I can't wait for the signs. We are the 28%. I can't wait to see those in the primaries.
Matt, what's your view on Mitt Romney?
I think it's hilarious. I mean, Mike did a great job of teeing that up with quoting Bill Buckley, of course, and we at American Majority and others at RedState.com and other places, conservative movement activists, realize that you've got to choose the most conservative candidate you can during the primary and support, hopefully, the person who can win in the general. This ain't the time to compromise on conservative beliefs. You talk about people auditioning, Mike, for this job. Mitt's been auditioning for this job for 5 years, and he can't get above 30%. It's amazing to me. And you also, both of you threw the word in choice in there a lot, a choice election and a choice between Obama and somebody. I don't see the choice in a Mitt Romney who gave the blueprint for Obamacare. I don't see a strong contrast between he or Newt Gingrich or anybody who was for TARP or for the housing bubble or any of these things. There's no clear choice when you present that candidate with an R behind them. I'm not in this for a our team beats your team type deal. I want actual substantial policy change. I don't want a cosmetic, straight from central casting Mitt Romney Republican candidate. I want somebody who's going to put in actual different policies, repeal Obamacare, fix the problems that are going on right now, fix unemployment. The only thing I can say good about Governor Romney is that he might have in his sort of businessman's heart a better grasp of how to run and tinker around the edges on some things of commerce.
Well, Matt, he did design what has been called the model for
he
Obamacare in Massachusetts.
His advisors were in the White House.
But according to Mitt Romney, he believes in states' rights. And
are you suggesting he flip-flopped? Are you suggesting that Mitt Romney went back?
I'm asking the question.
On a
you can make any accusations you want.
This is my shock face.
Mitt Romney has said that even though he had an individual mandate in the Massachusetts program,
right,
and whether or not it was a model for President Obama is something that he's not real clear on. But whatever it is, he's made it clear that he will repeal at the national level. States can do whatever they want. That's not good enough.
And I'll follow him right off that cliff. His word is his bond, right? This is a man who never changes his position.
You don't think his word is his bond?
I certainly don't. I think Mitt Romney has changed. As John Huntsman put it, he's a perfectly lubricated weather vane.
Well, Mike, that is the rub. That is the Mitt Romney complaint. You hear it from Republicans. You even hear it from the Obama administration. This is a man who changes his stripes. He used to be governor of a very liberal state, Massachusetts. He ran against Ted Kennedy, and he said at one point in a video that just came out from a blogger who went back and tracked him to 1994 on C-SPAN that he was a progressive Republican, two words that really haven't been used together often since Teddy Roosevelt. Who is Mitt Romney? Is he the guy that was governor of Massachusetts, or is he the guy who's running for president right now?
He's an extraordinarily astute public servant, is who he is. When you're serving in public office or when you're campaigning for public office, what you want to do is not be so far off to the side that you're irrelevant to your constituency, because you can't get elected that way. You want to be as close as you can. Massachusetts has had a history of electing a totally wacko legislature. I mean, these people are just, somewhere to the right of, somewhere to the left of the Kremlin. But they've
had progressive Republican governors. William Weld, for example,
but they
have
a history of electing a slightly left of center Republican governor who will sort of trim the excesses of the legislature they have there.
And that's what Governor William Weld was.
So when Romney,
is Mitt Romney the same?
Well, when he was governor of Massachusetts, and let me give it to you in 4 syllables, Massachusetts. When you're governor of Massachusetts, that's the way you have to govern, or you become completely and totally irrelevant. Remember,
so he's justified in changing his views to reflect the electorate.
85% of the Massachusetts General Assembly, or their state legislature, is Democrat. 85%. They had a lock, an absolute lock, to override any veto that
Mike's
might
going
give.
straight to the issue.
Mike, none of the three of us dispute. We can concede the point. Massachusetts is more liberal than the rest of the country. They voted for George McGovern in 1972. No one is going to dispute that Massachusetts, which currently has a full slate of Democratic elected representatives to the House and a legislature that, as you say, I think it's at least 3/4, maybe more. Massachusetts is a blue state. Concede the point. Is it therefore justified for Mitt Romney to be more liberal as governor of Massachusetts and now more conservative? Is he, in Matt's words, a lubricated weather vane?
Not only do I think it's a move of an astute public servant. I think it's desirable.
It's the move of a non-leader.
I think it's desirable. What you have is, someone who, in order to be effective in Massachusetts, probably presented themselves as somewhat more centerish to left of center than they were in reality. And now that they have the opportunity on a national stage, they're moving to more accurately reflect the electorate and what they'd like to accomplish as a public servant at the national as opposed to the state level. I think it's the mark of an intelligent and an astute and an effective public servant.
Okay, well, I can
see the Trojan horse.
I can see Matt is chomping at the bit, ready to respond. Unfortunately, we have to take a break. Sure. I will give you a chance after the break, Matt. And my real question to you, Matt, when we come back, is, all right, so he was a more liberal, more progressive governor of Massachusetts. He says he's more conservative now. How do we know which is the real Mitt Romney? I mean, once you become president, you can pretty much do what you want.
As President Obama has shown, he does whatever he wants.
President Obama's been too conservative for my liking, so I understand.
Rules by executive order. I don't get it.
The question when we come back is, who is the real Mitt Romney? If you want to join this discussion, you can too. Just call in 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275. Back after this.
I would like to speak English better. Me gustaría hablar inglés mejor.
I want to be a U.S. citizen.
Quisiera ser ciudadano de los Estados Unidos.
For over 35 years,
Por más de 35 años,
the Hispanic Committee of Virginia has been serving our community.
el Comité Hispano de Virginia ha estado sirviendo a nuestra comunidad.
Job training and placement,
Capacitación, ayuda para conseguir trabajo,
education for children and adults,
educación para niños y adultos,
immigration, naturalization, and medical referrals.
ayuda para los procesos de inmigración y naturalización y orientación sobre médicos
Are a small part of what we do.
son solo una pequeña parte de lo que hacemos.
For help, information, or to volunteer,
Para ayuda, información o para ofrecerse como voluntario,
contact the Hispanic Committee of Virginia,
comuníquese con el Comité Hispano de Virginia,
helping everyone participate more fully in American society.
ayudando a todos a participar plenamente en la sociedad norteamericana.
Hey, Lena, where's yours?
Would you notice if you were missing half your kidney function? According to the National Kidney Foundation, 20 million people have chronic kidney disease, and 20 million more may be at risk and not even know it. Anyone with high blood pressure, diabetes, or family history of chronic kidney disease is at risk. Early diagnosis is vitally important. To get the whole story, talk to your doctor and visit the National Kidney Foundation at kidney.org or call for a free brochure. Because when it comes to chronic kidney disease...
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine. As a Democrat who supports President Obama, I have frankly been enjoying watching the Republicans debate each other, just as I'm enjoying watching these two Republicans debate each other. Mike Lane to my left and Matt Robbins to my far left. They may be to my right politically. They're sitting to my left here on the dais. Mike, you wanted to say one more thing in defense of Matt Romney before Matt tears him from limb to limb.
Mitt Romney, not Matt Romney. But
excuse me, Mitt Romney.
It's okay. He doesn't know his first name either. He doesn't know his first name either.
I wanted to bring it down to a personal level, and that is, as our regular viewers know, because you introduced me like this, and you certainly know several times, our crew knows, I was elected once in Arlington County, which is the bluest of blue areas in Virginia. It's almost the same.
So you're a progressive Republican too.
Almost the same. I will tell you that in order to be effective, in order to get elected, and in order to be able to help the citizens out with my point of view, which everybody agreed was good, I probably presented myself as a much more moderate candidate than I really am deep inside.
This sounds like true political confessions.
It's not true confessions. It's just, it's reality. And that's what you need to do when you're running in
Romney
that kind of an area.
Well, that's maybe what he's looking for. All right, Matt. So speaking of Mitt Romney, and
Willard
his full name is Willard Mitt Romney.
Although he said his first name was Mitt.
He even said to Wolf Blitzer in a joke that his first name was Mitt, which isn't true.
It's remarkable.
So given that Willard Mitt Romney doesn't even seem to know his first name, Mike says it's all a fake. It was all a ruse. He tricked the voters of Massachusetts
it's like pro wrestling.
by pretending to be liberal, but really he's a true conservative. Elect him, and this Manchurian candidate will show his true stripes.
He presented himself as a more moderate to slightly left of center than he is in reality. That's what I said.
All right, Matt, go to town.
Well, Mike is pointing out the complete caricature and unfortunately true in this case of Willard Mitt Romney, of somebody who's not a leader, somebody who literally has their finger in the wind, as I said a minute ago, someone who has, I never understood why he went to Massachusetts to be governor in the first place. His family's from Michigan.
Right.
He has a Mormon background in Utah. I guess he couldn't run against Huntsman at the same time. He goes to
Michigan is a more middle of the road state.
Absolutely,
than Massachusetts,
but this is a man so, Newt zinged him, and Newt does what he does best at these debates, with that line and said, you would have been a career politician, Mitt Romney, had you won your election against Ted Kennedy in Massachusetts in 1994 or 96. I can't recall which one it was. This is a man who's sort of been, hanging the shingle out to serve, quote unquote, for 20 years. I don't know if Mitt didn't get voted most likely to succeed in his high school yearbook. I don't know if he wasn't loved enough at home. I don't know what it is, but he's out there on the hustings every single cycle, it seems like. One video clip, next to Ted Kennedy saying, I'm more liberal than this guy on choice and gay marriage and you name it. And then the new clip with the progressive Republican moniker. So it's no wonder that the base isn't going for this.
But Matt, address Mike's argument. So Mike makes basically two arguments. One, he says he's more electable than any of the other candidates. And two,
which I disagree with completely.
Okay, well, I want you to get to that. And two, let's get to that, and then I'll address. The second thing I wanted to raise is Mike's argument that isn't the true Mitt Romney. He was putting on a ruse for the Massachusetts voters.
Right.
Really, the true Mitt Romney is more conservative than he pretended to be as governor.
Let's take the first one first, and let's point out, the difference of two words: preference and intensity. The people that come out to the Hawkeye caucus, I call them, are hardcore conservatives. They are folks who want to make their mark. They want to choose somebody who's going to actually. The whole point of the past 2.5 years, 3 years, the Tea Party movement, the rise of the Ron Paul movement, even flowering beyond what it did in 2008, is that folks are tired. They are sick and tired of Republicans, of Democrats, of whomever's in the White House, only paying lip service to these ideas that the Main Street, middle class Americans on both sides of the aisle want. And so they don't want the professional politicians. Mitt is running at a profoundly inopportune moment for himself.
But Mike's not arguing that he's the best to win the Iowa caucuses. Mike is arguing he's the best to win a general election against Obama.
Which I've stated earlier. You're going to have no contrast between he and Obama. You're going to have Obamacare.
Rick
You're
Perry is the most electable? Who's the most electable?
Electability is a vital part of the argument.
Who's the most electable Republican candidate?
The most
John
electable? No. I mean, as I think I told you earlier, there's a scenario by which Ron Paul can win Iowa. There's a scenario by which...
But he's not electable as a general candidate.
He's not. But these are messages being sent by the base to the establishment,
to the party. Who is the most electable Republican candidate?
I think Rick Perry is the one still in the race that the conservatives would line up behind and still agree with on matters of policy, who could still, it's a long shot, it's sort of like blowing up the Death Star at the end of the movie. It's still a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, but he could still make it through one or two of these
I'll get to Rick Perry in a second.
Answer
the other question, which is Mike's point that when Romney was governor of Massachusetts, he really didn't mean it. He wasn't as liberal as he pretended to be.
He rips the mask off and it's Mission Impossible.
Exactly.
It's our great Scooby-Doo ending.
That's Mike's view. How do you address that?
I think again, Mitt didn't run for a second term because he sort of knew he couldn't do this trick again. I think it's dishonest. I think at best it's sort of nudge, nudge, wink, wink politics, and it's not leadership. What people want right now is, and that's why Newt is getting so much traction, they want somebody who will take the fight to this incredibly leftist president, to this incredibly far-flung Congress that put through everything he ever wanted in the first 2 years of his term. They want someone to stand up atop history, to quote Buckley again, and scream stop. So they like the street fight. They do not want this sort of genteel, patrician Brahmin that is Mitt Romney or the current incarnation of Mitt Romney. They want somebody who's going to go in there and mix it up, which is why Newt's gotten traction. It's why Kane got traction before that, and I think Perry will again.
Mike, one last defense of Mitt Romney before we move on.
I agree with Matt on almost everything he believes and almost everything he says, but you have to look at reality. He's talking about turning.
He's not reality.
He's talking about turning this into a turnout election now, as opposed to a referendum election. All you got to do is get to your base, motivate them, turn them out.
They're not going to turn out for Romney.
You know what? Any Republican who doesn't come out, and any Republican who doesn't commit to doing a military low crawl naked over a bed of glass shards to vote against Obama.
I was on the McCain campaign.
You know what?
I was on the McCain campaign. John McCain had a conservative record, and people stayed home. They're not going to come out for Mitt Romney.
To say you're not going to come out for Mitt Romney is childish. They are immature and childish if they don't do so, and I'll tell them to their face. They're childish if you don't come out and vote for Mitt Romney. Now, we don't want a turnout election because that's too problematic for us. We want a referendum election. That's my point all the way through. That's what makes Romney the most electable at this point.
We will, I'm sure, get back to Romney, but I want to move on to Matt's choice, Rick Perry.
Oh, we skipped a few in the middle there.
We'll get to the others, I promise.
I mean, Rick's way down right now.
Newt will have his time, I guarantee you. But let's talk about your personal choice.
Sure. It's not my personal choice. It's conservative grassroots.
But if you were voting today in the Virginia primary, you would pull the lever Rick Perry. Okay, so there's there's three things about Rick Perry. Number one, his position on immigration has really got a lot of Republicans upset. Number two, he hasn't done so well in debates. And number three,
I knew that was coming. Number three.
He's pulled this joke before.
He had a senior moment.
Oops.
He did.
Okay, so since
I thought Dr. Paul was going to give him a shot or something.
I'll give you the start. I gave Mike the start on Mitt Romney.
Sure.
Why is Rick Perry the best candidate?
Well, I think best is a subjective term.
Of the ones
I think the most conservative candidate is what we would argue, the American majority.
More conservative than Michelle Bachmann? More conservative than Rick Santorum?
You know, and let's do a side detour here. Mike's right about reality. You know, it's great to espouse these ideas, and Newt Gingrich has certainly paid lip service to these ideas for 20 years. It's wonderful for Michelle Bachmann. It's just peachy for Rick Santorum to say these wonderful platitudes. They don't have a mathematical chance in hell of winning.
But Rick Perry does, because
Rick Perry is still showing up in the polls.
Poll ratings aren't much higher than Michelle Bachmann's.
They're not, but a few points, as you know, in these early caucuses and primaries can go a long way. And I really believe, I think there's a real instinctive feeling out there, as I talk to friends who are in Iowa and friends who are in New Hampshire, when folks get to that private curtain and that private room and pull that lever and make their choices, they're not going to be happy with those first two choices. They're going to go for Dr. Paul. They're going to go for
How
Governor
do you
Perry.
Address Rick Perry's oops moment?
He has not debated.
I got to tell you, he looked really foolish in front of millions of Americans.
You can go look at my Twitter account.
I mean, they talked about Howard Dean's scream as the end of him. I don't think that was fair to Howard Dean. But frankly, it's fairer Rick Perry's oops moments.
You can go to my
Howard
Twitter
Dean's
account
scream.
and you can see the three words I wrote. I said, Perry is done. That's what I wrote that night.
I wrote the same thing.
There you
actually,
go.
on my Twitter account.
But this has been a very unique race, as we've all seen. It's been sort of American Idol, The Amazing Race, 24, all put into one thing here. And so people have come and gone, and I think the cycle is so fast now, and it's so insane with 75 debates or whatever the number is. That's not going to be the only thing held against him.
Let me say something.
Here's a governor of 10 years with an amazing conservative record on jobs, on the economy, on all sorts of hardcore issues that we need most right now. Let's not forget about this referendum Mike talks about of choice about the economy. Where are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? Is unemployment higher now than it was 4 years ago? Perry's got the record on that. I don't think the average Republican, the average conservative really cares. If he's able to get some traction in one of these early states, they're going to be happy to put in somebody with a proven record of that. Michelle Bachmann doesn't have that record.
Matt, let me say this as a Democrat. Rick Perry reminds me of George W. Bush. And it's not just the Texas accent, though I have to admit that's part of it.
And I'm okay with that.
There's a certain Texas look.
And I'm okay with that.
I think that's all. But it's not just the Texan stuff. Frankly, it's the intelligent stuff. Rick Perry does not come across as someone well in command of the facts, who knows what he's talking about.
It's amazing this
more in command than Obama. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing this kid from a dirt farm, made it 20, 30 years now in politics.
Listen, Obama
he must
grew
be an
up poor
idiot.
too. But Obama's clearly a very intelligent man. I'm not so sure about Rick Perry.
Because everything he's done has worked out so well. I mean, unemployment is what? Almost 9%? I mean, it's just unreal right now. 3 years, he said, if I don't do this in 3 or 4 years, it's going to be a one-term proposition. And he went back on that in 60 minutes.
He took us out of the Bush Depression.
That's true. That's true.
And the economy's growing.
But that's fine, Mark.
But that's a side issue.
If liberals want to underestimate or misunderestimate, as George W. would say.
That's right.
If they want to misunderestimate our candidates, that's your prerogative. We're always the amiable dunces on the right.
All right.
Always.
Let me go to Mike. So, Mike, Matt's argument is the Texas miracle. That 10 years as governor, terrific economic growth. This is the thing that, frankly, people used to sell about Rick Perry before the oops moment, and really no one ever heard from him again. What about the Texas economy? What about Rick Perry? Is he electable?
Well, Matt's right. I've said before, I agree with a lot of what he says. He's right. Perry's record as governor of Texas is just it's perfect. I mean, he's just done a superbly good job running that state. I think he would make a fine president if he got the nomination. I would crawl naked over a bed of glass shards to vote for him, as I would anyone who gets the nomination for our party.
Ron Paul?
Ron Paul,
I don't know that you crawl over the glass for Ron Paul.
No, Ron Paul, I would crawl over the glass shards, but I would wear clothes when I did it. I would not be naked.
All right. Why is Rick Perry the better choice?
He'll make a fine president. I still believe, as I've said in the beginning, that this election is a referendum election. You
don't think he's electable, Rick Perry?
No.
Or as electable as Mitt Romney?
I don't think he's as electable.
Why not?
Because we're talking about, we always call it the 20% in the middle that you're really fighting over. I don't actually believe it's that big. I think it's closer to about 12 or 14% in the middle.
I agree with you, by the way.
But that's what we're fighting over. And I think that Mitt Romney has positioned himself through the campaign so far to appeal more strongly to that 12, 14% in the middle that has the rest of the Republican
presents a stronger
field.
Contrast
than
Rick Perry.
No, I don't know that the middle is looking for that stronger contrast. That's
so at the end of the day, Mike says he'll grab the middle.
It's a fill-in-the-blank
Matt
election
says
for Mike.
He'll have a stronger contrast. And yet neither of your candidates is winning right now.
Sure.
Newt Gingrich is ahead in the race. We'll get to Speaker Gingrich right after the break. If you want to call in, please do. 888-488-MARK. 888-488-6275. Back after this.
Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ring. Nothing very nice. Holy spice. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home?
When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water.
At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site.
That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff.
You know what the best part is?
What?
More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters, collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. It has been an exciting presidential nomination race for the Republicans. It's going to get even more exciting in the next month. And my two Republicans to my left, ironically, very much disagree with Mike Lane, he preferring Mitt Romney. It's hard with Mike, Matt, Mark, and Mitt Romney. And Matt Robbins preferring Rick Perry. But neither of your candidates, gentlemen, is ahead in the polls right now. Maybe there's a tie, according to one poll. But it seems that the clear front runner right now is neither Mitt Romney nor Rick Perry, but the former Speaker of the House, the person who coordinated the conservative revolution back in 1994. He's the one who engineered the Republicans taking over the House of Representatives for the first time in some 40 or 50 years, as it was. Why isn't he your first choice? Let me start with you, Matt.
Oh, my gosh, Mark. Where to begin with Mr. Gingrich? He does deserve, mega kudos for his marketing of the incoming freshman class and the origination of sort of the political training idea.
Contract with America.
Well, he didn't write that. He didn't write it. He marketed it. So
okay.
let's be clear about who did what. Newt was more instrumental in actually starting something called GoPac, which is what I do for a living now. I don't work for GoPac, but we run a nonprofit that trains people to run for office. So that was a very nice idea, building a farm team that came in on a wave of 94. Speaker Gingrich went on to work with Clinton and the Clinton administration, of course, to end welfare as it was known then and to change it, substantially. He got a lot of kudos for those things. However, at the same time he's having the President of the United States, held up and impeached. He's committing adultery, having an affair on the side. He's actually committing ethics violations. This is a man who seems to have no moral center whatsoever other than money making. I mean, wow. 26 books and counting. He's still signing books on the nominating, on the caucus tour and the primary tour. On his third wife, $2 million from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. He will go to the highest bidder. I believe he paid himself $3 million a year in his nonprofit called American Solutions. They were going to propose 67 answers for America's most pressing problems and questions. Can you name one answer they provided over 10 years of being in service?
I can't.
Can you name one person?
I can't, but I'm a Democrat.
Can you name one person that served with Speaker Gingrich in Congress besides Lindsey Graham, who comes out in favor of him? I mean, Joe.
Lindsey Graham actually led the coup against Newt, although he's apologized for it.
Which was happening
and he's
within 4 years. This is a man who has no
moral. Now that's a very strong allegation, Mike. No moral center. I mean, this is a man obviously who left his first wife while she was dying to see a second wife. But that's Newt.
He's not a conservative.
No moral center, not a conservative. Those are pretty strong allegations.
Let me correct the record. I believe Bob Livingston is also supporting Newt Gingrich in his run for.
We've got one.
He was speaker for a day, I believe, or maybe a week.
Speaker.
Bob's a good man. I'm surprised at that.
Presumptive speaker for a week.
And Bob Livingston is a good guy.
He is a great guy.
Look, Newt freely admits, under any circumstances under which he's questioned about it, that he came to a complete and full understanding of the moral place in life later in life than did most people. He admits that he's made mega mistakes, not just in his personal life, but in other things. He has sought forgiveness for those mistakes that he's made.
Do you believe him?
He's had a religious conversion.
Do you believe him?
Which I believe to be a very genuine religious conversion.
You do.
And that's all great in his private life.
And I don't believe that the things that have been part of his history over time are part of his life anymore. I think he's grown past them. And
ethics violations? What about all the money, the right of play? He says he wasn't a lobbyist, but at the same time, he influenced Republicans on behalf of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac for $1.6 million.
Look, lobbying is a term that you can use.
It depends on what the meaning of it is.
If I was to look at it, I'd say,
of course he was a lobbyist.
But you know what? I was a lobbyist too. Lobbyist is not a dirty word.
That he should admit it.
And in fact, even though the president says he has kept lobbyists out, he is the most ethically challenged and lobbyist-infiltrated administration in the
since George W. Bush.
in the history of our country.
Oh, they're all, every one of them.
The lobbyists
Wall Street money is pouring into
Obama
Obama.
Administration. And so let's just get past this lobbying thing being bad, because lobbying's not bad.
So are you saying that you prefer, say, Newt Gingrich over Rick Perry?
No, I'm saying that I think Newt Gingrich would make a fine president if he's our nominee, and I will crawl over glass shards, a bed of glass shards.
How many clothes on? How many clothes on this time?
I'll probably wear a swimsuit on that one.
Okay, but Mitt Romney's your first choice. Who's your second choice?
Mark, I don't rank them like that.
Okay.
I look for, if the whole field is, been Romney versus who is the not Romney.
Right.
I look at it as Romney being the most electable versus the field, and I would enthusiastically support almost everyone in the field, with the notable exception, as you know, of Ron Paul, who I would support, but it wouldn't be as enthusiastically as the rest.
Mostly because you disagree with him on international issues.
Oh yeah, I think he's. I think he's actually almost as bad as President Obama on international issues. Yes.
I think he's a lot worse, but we'll get to Ron Paul in a second. Matt, Mike is defending Newt. He's not saying it's his favorite candidate.
Right. I'm not judging Newt Gingrich. I mean, I think it's great if he converted.
You said he had no moral center.
I did, but I'm not.
That sounds like judgment to me.
No, I'm not saying he can't go to church. I'm not saying he can't convert. I'm not saying he can't remarry. I'm saying he shouldn't be running as an exemplar of the moral rectitude of the modern-day Republican Party and the Christian conservatives that make up a lot of its base.
And yet, he is either first or tied for first in the race right now.
He's the last man standing.
He's the last not Romney standing.
Well, maybe not.
He's the last flash in the pan.
Rick Santorum hasn't had his chance yet.
Maybe not.
And he never will.
I actually think that Newt is floating down at this point to the point where in the next 48 hours...
It's like a giant Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade.
In the next 48 hours...
pulling down.
His head is like a giant float.
Literally.
With less than 2 weeks to go, the question will be, well, who's going to be the final not Romney?
I think you're going to see, and I told Mark this earlier.
I think Dr. Paul's going to be
I think so, too. I think I've got very close friends and very good people on the ground in Iowa they're massively organized. I think Dr. Paul's going to come from behind.
You think Ron Paul's going to win the Iowa caucus?
You heard it here first, Mark. And I think Huntsman's got a good chance of doing the same thing in New Hampshire.
Winning New Hampshire.
At least as close second, if not toppling Mitt altogether. I really think he does. Huntsman's been spending all his firepower in one state. And right in Mitt's backyard. Mitt's best laid plans are falling apart.
Well, it might be Gingrich, Paul, and it might be, Romney, Huntsman. I think that's...
No, two Mormons would never happen.
Look, I agree. I keep telling you how much I agree with you, Matt. I agree with him that the sneaking in, almost likely winner now in Iowa is going to be Ron Paul.
Really?
I think, Gingrich doesn't have an organization.
And the media is going to ignore it. The media is going to completely
well, let's talk about Ron Paul.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Now, by saying that, I disagree with his second part. By saying that, I think that, this is it. I mean, Iowa has now forfeited any right to claim, the right to be an early state.
Remember President Huckabee?
Have a significant influence. No,
me neither.
No, it's done. Iowa's out, and I will change my profession to changing the nominating system to get Iowa out of there. They have disqualified themselves.
Well, let me suggest to you that maybe it's because it's a caucus, not primary.
I disagree with him on the fact that Huntsman's going to sneak up in New Hampshire. I just don't see it happening.
We'll get to Huntsman in a second.
I went to school in New Hampshire. I got people up there too. I don't see it happening.
We'll get to Huntsman in a second. Let's talk about Ron Paul for a second here. Because...
Better than Obama, without a doubt.
Because...
As Dr. Paul said, anybody on the stage is better than Obama.
Well, Ron Paul is certainly an interesting character. I got to give him one thing. Ron Paul is the most consistent presidential candidate I've ever seen. In either party.
73% when polled today said they believed he had strong convictions.
Absolutely consistent. He has strong convictions. He won't bend for anyone, including on some really strange notions, like that we should go back to the gold standard, which I don't think anyone supports.
Actually, there are a lot of people.
But I got to tell you, William Jennings Bryan would not be very happy with Ron Paul because 100 years ago he said he wouldn't be crucified on a cross of gold. But Ron Paul has his base.
He does.
And it is a solid base. And there are it's interesting because it's a base that actually crosses parties. You will find, I think, that many Ron Paul supporters, should he not take the nomination, and most people do not think he will vote for the Democrats because a lot of libertarian principles include things like legalization of marijuana, pro-choice, pro-gay rights, and other things.
Is anybody really going to cast their vote based on legalization of marijuana?
If they can get themselves in the polls
without... We want to let them vote if that's their issue.
I just spent 8 weeks on the road this fall at 10 different college campuses with the Ron Paul youth.
Young people
Americans
love
for Liberty.
Ron Paul.
And it's not just about dope smoking. They are
I know.
mad as hell about the Fed, yes. They're mad as hell about foreign policy to some degree.
That's right. About the Fed.
They're mostly mad, again, to come back to my earlier point, that both sides of this corporate sort of statism party structure in D.C. that takes Wall Street money, that takes lobbyist money, are both espousing these principles every 4 years, and then like Lucy with the football, they move it every single time.
Many want to restrict executive authority. One of the things that Ron Paul is very eloquent about is when it comes to banning torture, when it comes to not having secret prisons, when it comes to not having war without a declaration of war, in which case
those little pesky
he's
things.
to the left,
Where's
I think you could say.
When you said
it's right here.
That's right. I mean, the War Powers Act, right?
Without his Congress.
No, it's here. It's blocked by the microphone. But it does say that you have to have a declaration of war. And in this case, he's arguably to the left of both George W. Bush and even President Obama, who he criticized to his left because of executive authority. Now, he has a very interesting base. Why should Ron Paul's base, and he may well win the Iowa caucuses, why would they vote Republican? It seems to me that Ron Paul's base wants troops home from Iraq, wants troops home from Afghanistan, doesn't want the United States government torturing people. On international policy, it's solidly with Obama. On domestic policy, many of them believe live and let live. Equal rights for gay people, pro-choice for women, libertarian ideology generally means get the government out of our lives. When it comes to personal freedoms, that's the Democratic
They're
base.
not going to vote for an Obama who put in a healthcare, a nationwide healthcare program.
Well, they don't like that part of it, that's for sure.
It's visceral.
Matt may disagree with me on this, but I firmly believe that one of our strengths as a party compared to the Democrats is that Republicans allow for freedom of thought and diversity of opinion within the party.
Oh, we have that.
And
we have Joe Lieberman, and we have Dennis Kucinich in the same party.
But you tried to throw Joe Lieberman out of the Senate.
Absolutely.
Stifle that.
He left the party.
You have a guy who's a United States senator and from Pennsylvania and the son of a governor who wasn't his father wasn't even allowed to address the Democratic convention.
And your party
because
threw
he
away
had diversity of thought.
Senator Bennett in Utah.
He dared to be.
We did.
As someone who was insufficiently conservative.
In a primary.
That's what happened to Joe Lieberman. He lost in the Democratic primary. I mean, that's.
I don't think anybody hated Bob Bennett.
All right. So Ron Paul, let's say he wins the Iowa caucus. He has no shot in New Hampshire?
No, none.
None. So, but why couldn't
so sure.
Why couldn't he win a South Carolina or a Florida? Yeah. If the field is sufficiently split and people can't decide between Romney and Gingrich and Rick Perry, why couldn't he win that 15-20% of the race and remain in contention?
I think he'll mix it up, and I think somebody else will slip in.
Yeah, look, coming out of Iowa, the strategy is be one of the top three. Since nobody expects Ron Paul to go really far and to be a real factor, except in a couple states, maybe this year the rules are different. Maybe it's a top four finish that you do. But Paul's not going to do well in New Hampshire. I'll grant you that he can do well in South Carolina and probably will do well in South Carolina to keep himself maybe going down towards Florida and a few other states. But ultimately, he just runs out of gas.
Okay, well, there's still three candidates we haven't discussed. Right. We dealt a little bit into John Huntsman. I want to get further into him because he may be a factor in New Hampshire, if anywhere, because he doesn't seem to be a factor much of anywhere. And Rick Santorum, the guy nobody talks about. Michelle Bachmann, why did she fall? There are more candidates. We're going to get to them. Folks, if you want to call in and add your 2 cents, this is your last chance to do so. Just dial in toll-free, 888-488-MARK, 888-488-6275.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folks, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
Here again, the Inside Scoop with Mark Levine.
Welcome back to the Inside Scoop. I'm your host, Mark Levine, with two Republicans sitting to my left. Mike Lane, who is the president of Intelligence Strategies, a Republican political consulting firm, and Matt Robbins, who's the executive director of the American Majority, a conservative political training center. And we're talking about the Republican presidential race. Now, you've both said who you prefer. There are some smaller, shouldn't say smaller, more minor candidates, ones who've won less in the polls, that don't get hardly any attention in the press. Let's give them at least a modicum of attention that they deserve. Matt, you mentioned John Huntsman, former governor of Utah.
Did.
The rap on him is that as a former ambassador for President Obama to China, that he's considered way too moderate to ever win. You represent a lot of conservatives.
We don't like this diplomacy thing.
I mean, you represent the fire-breathing wing of the Republican Party. Huntsman doesn't have a shot, does he?
I don't think he does for the nomination. I think he has a chance to really bloody a nose in the one state where he's working, which is New Hampshire.
And
Mike disagrees.
And the nose he would bloody would be Mitt Romney.
It absolutely would. And there's no love lost between those campaigns, even though they're both Mormons, both family ties to Utah. But Huntsman's record is a very conservative one, unlike Mitt. You know, he ran in a red state where his family was from, and he did very, very well. So he has no chance,
but he'll drag Mitt Romney down as he goes.
He could. I think I probably lean towards Mike, after hearing his talk tonight about New Hampshire. He's probably not going to do as well as I'd like him to do. I think Huntsman's much more conservative.
I don't think he'll break 10%.
I think Huntsman's much more conservative than we give him credit for.
Well, Mike, will Huntsman help take Romney down?
Matt's right. Huntsman's record as governor of Utah was very conservative, very successful. He made an excellent governor. I'm not one of those people that holds his service against him in the administration.
No, nor should we.
I believe that foreign policy ought to be bipartisan and that we ought to work in the best interests of our country together. And for him to have agreed to be the ambassador on behalf of the Obama administration was...
Which Obama did to keep him out of this race.
Which Obama did, right, to keep him out of this race.
Yeah.
And it didn't
Epic
work.
fail.
And you say he's not a clever president of the United States.
Well, it didn't work.
I think it did.
Anyway.
Didn't it work? Does Huntsman have a chance?
No, I'll tell you where Huntsman...
Does Huntsman have a chance to win this nomination, Mike?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he'd make an excellent president if he got the nomination, but I don't think he has a chance to win the nomination.
Why not? Because of the ambassadorship or other reasons?
No, I don't think it's the ambassadorship.
I think it's poor marketing. I think his campaign's been poorly marketed.
He got into the race way too late. He didn't have an organization together. By the time he hasn't raised the money because he hasn't been able to poll well. And all these things combine where it's sort of a spiral that's holding you down. And he may be the next person as Newt floats down. Instead of Dr. Paul, who I believe it's going to be, it might be Huntsman that gets the next look. But I don't think so. I think it's...
I'll tell you this about John Huntsman. His three daughters do the best YouTube commercials I've ever seen. I want to give them kudos for that.
They use new media very well.
So let's talk about Michelle Bachmann, because she was the first winner. She won the Iowa straw poll. She beat Ron Paul, who has good organization. She beat him in the Iowa straw poll. I've seen her. I think she, obviously I disagree with her ideas, but I must say she puts them forward compellingly. She is a solid conservative. She is a conservative to Rick Perry's right on immigration. She's constantly tearing Newt Gingrich apart. She's certainly to the right of Mitt Romney. She seems to me to be the most consistent conservative up there. Ron Paul is consistent, but he's a consistent libertarian. He's not a consistent conservative. She should be your choice, gentlemen. Why not Michelle Bachmann?
Not only that, she's a relatively attractive babe, So
she's not bad looking.
All right, here's the thing on Michelle, if I may.
Sure.
That was a very sexist comment, Mike. I just have to throw that out.
Of course it was, but it doesn't hurt in politics.
Doesn't hurt to be attractive.
Telegenic.
And none of the men are, that's for sure.
Telegenic is the technical term.
Yes.
Look, let's discount the straw poll. The straw poll is just something that you buy. You know, you decide early
Tim Pawlenty tried to buy it, and it didn't succeed for him.
He didn't have enough money.
Michelle Bachmann has more money than Tim Pawlenty.
At that time, she spent more money on the straw poll than he did. The straw poll is something that you buy. I mean, that's just the way it is.
But isn't she more of a consistent conservative than any other candidate up there?
I believe she is very conservative. I believe she'd make an excellent president if she was the nominee of our party.
You're going to crawl over glass naked?
I would crawl over glass shards in deference to the fact that she's female. I won't be naked while I do it, but I would do anything to help her and get her elected. The problem with Michelle at this point, as I see it, is the fact that she's the one who has been going after Gingrich. More so than anybody else, and infrequently in politics, when you have a multi-candidate field and an attack dog goes after the front runner, infrequently is the attack dog the one that benefits from the decline and the attacks on the front runner as Gingrich floats down. I don't think she's the recipient of that. On the other hand, in her extraordinarily dedicated campaign, unlike everybody else who's doing 2, 3, and sometimes 4 stops a day in Iowa and New Hampshire, she's doing 13 stops a day. She's out hustling and out campaigning everybody out there. It might pay off for her.
Matt, in Bachmann's defense, I mean, her numbers were going down before she attacked Newt Gingrich.
Matter of fact, we called on her to get out of the race a month and a half ago.
Really?
American majority did, yeah.
Why? Isn't she your most consistent conservative? Isn't she more conservative than Rick Perry? I think she is.
Mark, I mean, we can all go to the church of our choice, synagogue of our choice, and recite the creed of our choice. Just saying it doesn't make it so. And to use Mike's,
do you agree that she's the most conservative?
She certainly says the most conservative things.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. You look at her record. I think 5 terms in Congress.
She's very conservative.
One of 435 members. I would say she's a backbencher. I would say she's somebody who's accomplished very little. I want to look at people like a governor. I want to look at people who had executive experience. I want to look at people who can do the job of president. Unlike your party, Mark, who elected an unknown U.S. senator fresh into that job, we actually like competence and credibility in our candidates. So with zooming way out from this race, you know, I bemoan the fact that Jeb Bush, that Mitch Daniels, that Chris Christie are not in this race. But even Paul Ryan, with a demonstrated record of actual excellence and success.
Yeah,
in
Ryan,
Congress,
who just combined with
Michelle,
with Senator Wyden of Oregon.
If I may,
actually, Alex Rivlin's plan.
Barney Frank's sister. If I may, Michelle has served on a couple of committees a couple of times. There's no legislation that bears her name. She's had no.
So you like what she says, but she hasn't been.
Exactly. She's a nice stump speaker, a nice circuit dinner speaker, but she's not considered.
Well, let me ask you then about the other more consistent conservative in the race. That's Rick Santorum.
Again, a U.S. senator, one term, and got his ass handed to him
from Pennsylvania.
There's the door. Thanks for playing.
A bluish state.
Absolutely. Rick was a terrible fit for that state. And Rick, while espousing some very conservative things, and I bear no animus toward him either, Rick also was very supportive of some big government pro-statism type things. Folks are tired of this pro wrestling routine where you're good guy one week and bad guy the next in WWE.
Well, Mike,
they want the real deal.
Rick Santorum's numbers are going up a little bit as every other not Romney has been tried. Now that Gingrich is falling and Ron Paul has a limit, there's only Santorum left, apparently.
If only we had black walnuts.
He's moving up from 2% to maybe 6%, I've seen in some polls.
You know, I agree with what Matt said, that Republicans are more looking for people with proven executive experience, and so therefore legislators such as Santorum and Bachmann are at a disadvantage as we compare them to governors, and that's really, I mean, Rick Santorum, he says all the right things, he's likable, he's good, he's got a track record, he's everything, he's just, I don't see at what point it gravitates to him to be the not Romney. I think he's out of time.
The Christian conservatives play a large part in your party, and it seems to me that Rick Santorum, Michelle Bachmann, Rick Perry all have appeals to them. I would argue that Newt Gingrich, Mitt Romney, certainly Ron Paul, John Huntsman have less ties.
Although Ron Paul has changed his phrasing and his sort of marketing to that group.
So a little bit. I mean, Ron Paul has his libertarian restrictions, but let's face it. Let me start with you, Matt. The Christian right they don't like Mitt Romney very much.
No, they do not.
And it's not just because he's a Mormon.
It's not because he's a Mormon at all. It goes to all the issues we started at the top of the show with. It goes to the chameleon issues. It goes to the
and on social
which
issues,
Mitt is going to show up tonight.
He was pro-choice before he was pro-life.
Right.
On gay rights, it's been interesting.
Chris Matthews turned to several panels over several nights on his show, and he asked several journalists and guests on his show. He said, "Can you tell me one core issue that Mitt Romney would not budge on if he were president of the United States?" And nobody, including me watching at home, including Chris leading the show, could name an issue that he wouldn't budge on. I mean, there's no center there. There's no there. Bless his heart.
Mike, is there an issue that Mitt Romney wouldn't budge on?
Yeah, Mitt Romney is a conservative in that he believes less government is better than more government. And in general, that's what
Unless
we're
the people
looking
want
for. No, I actually don't believe that. In Massachusetts, but that's Massachusetts. Look, let me quote, no radical left-wing pundit Ann Coulter, who is,
She is certainly a firebrand.
She is no left-wing wacko.
No, she's a right-wing wacko.
She says too. Well, number one, she's very strongly for Romney. Believes that he is the most electable one. And when it comes to the issues of, when he was in Massachusetts, he may have said this. When he's running for America, he may have said that. What Ann Coulter says is that I have no problem with people flip-flopping as long as they're flopping in my direction.
But he can flip back, can't he?
No, he can't. No, it's
We'll
not.
Slam the door behind him.
It's not possible.
Well, Mike, let me ask you.
He must have signed Grover's pledge.
One of the biggest things that frankly have revved up the Republicans, revved up them in the 2010 elections, and they've even given it the moniker Obamacare, right? They don't like the Affordable Health Care Act. They want people to die in the streets. They don't want them to have health care.
Come on, that was a cheap shot.
They don't. Of course, it's a cheap shot. But that's the point. Obamacare, the phrase the Republicans like, they are going to attack Obama. Can Mitt Romney, who did a very similar program in Massachusetts, can he be someone who makes the case to the American people about the Affordable Health Care Act, or would the nomination of Mitt Romney basically concede the point, that's law, and move on and discuss something else?
Absolutely, I believe he can, and the reason is twofold. Number one, it was a state program, and that's exactly the way our founding fathers designed.
And that distinction matters to the American people?
Absolutely. I believe it does. Those who believe in the Constitution, the fact the federal government is too big and exceeding its britches, and et cetera, they know that our founding fathers designed the states to be sovereign and to be different, and that everything didn't have to be the same, and that when you have a federal government that exceeds its constitutional limitations by enacting a national program like this that has no basis in the Constitution
You remember
at all,
when Mitt ran with a state rights T-shirt? You remember that?
That's the first thing. The second thing is Mitt is in a position to point out what they did right in Massachusetts and what they did wrong. And remember, he vetoed 6 different provisions of that bill that were excesses, according to him,
the bills are very similar.
and that because he was overridden in those vetoes. That's what you'll find out. He's the one the best one to make the case.
Matt, can he make the case? Do American people understand the distinction between a Massachusetts bill and a federal bill?
When my boat is sinking, I want Mike laying on it, scooping the water. I mean, this is remarkable yeoman's work. But there is just no way.
Let's end with some predictions, all right?
As anything different.
Do you both predict Ron Paul will win the Iowa caucus? Is that your prediction?
Prediction strong. If I had to place a quarter bet, I'd bet on Ron Paul today.
And you would as well?
I would.
Okay, winning New Hampshire primary is Mitt Romney.
I would bet $1 on that.
Who wins the South Carolina primary?
South Carolina's the firewall for establishment rhinos.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who's it going to be?
Well, Nikki Haley just endorsed
Mitt Romney.
So you think Romney will win
I don't think he'll
South
win.
Carolina?
I don't. I think Perry can come back.
You think Perry can come back and win South Carolina?
I do.
You call Mitt Romney for South Carolina?
If Jim DeMint stays out of it, then Mitt Romney.
That's a big if.
If Jim DeMint gets into it, then
it's whoever Jim DeMint endorses.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's whoever endorses, but it changes the entire game.
We will see. This is obviously going to be ongoing and very interesting. And as a Democrat, all I've got to say is President Obama beats any one of them, hands down. Hope you enjoyed the show. Check out the website at marklevinetalk.com. This is Mark Levine signing off.